Chapter 2, Nelson Mandela Long Walk to Freedom, written by uh, Nelson Lala Mandela. Okay, so before you read, apartheid is a political system that separates people according to their race. Can you say which of the three countries named below had such a political system until very recently? So, is it the United States of America, or South Africa, or Australia? It is South Africa. Have you heard of Nelson Mandela? Mandela and his African National Congress spent a lifetime fighting against apartheid. Mandela had to spend 30 years in prison, and finally, democratic elections were held in South Africa in 1994, and Mandela became the first black president of a new nation. So, this extract, that is, this chapter, is from his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. Okay, Mandela speaks about a historic occasion called the inauguration. Can you guess what the occasion might be? Check your guess with this news item from the BBC of 10th May 1994. So here we go. Nelson Mandela becomes South Africa's first black president. Nelson Mandela has become South Africa's first black president after more than 3 centuries of white rule. Mr. Mandela's African National Congress ANC party won 252 out of 400 seats in the first democratic elections of the South African history. So, I guess this is a very important paragraph. Okay, the inauguration ceremony took place in the Union Building amphitheater in Pretoria today, that is 10th May 1994, attended by politicians and dignitaries from over 140 countries. That's a lot of countries. Okay, for just the inauguration of one new democracy for a fact around the world. Okay. Now, never again will this beautiful land experience the oppression of one by another, said Nelson Mandela in his address. So, jubilant scenes on the streets of Pretoria followed the ceremony with black, white, and colors celebrating together. More than 100,000 African men, women, and children of all races sang and danced with joy. Here's an activity for us to do. In column A are some expressions you will find in the text. Make a guess and match each expression with an appropriate meaning from column B. We could do that. But we need to start with the chapter. 10th May, drawn bright and clear. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. Besieged means to be surrounded closely by. Okay. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheater formed by the Union buildings in Pretoria. For decades, this had been the seat of the white supremacy, and now it is the site for the rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non racial government. Now, what's an amphitheater? It's a building without a roof, with many rows of seats rising in steps. So, typically, this is seen in the ancient Greece or Rome. So on that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zenani on the podium. So Zenani, important one more question. So on the podium, Mr. De Klerk was the first sworn in as second deputy president. Mr. De Klerk, weird name. Then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as the first deputy president, and when it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and devote myself to the well being of the republic and its people. To the assembled guests and the watching world, I said, today, all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to the newborn liberty. Out of the experience and of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. We who were outlaws not so long ago have today been given the rare privilege to be host to the nations of the world on our own soil. We thank all of our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. We have at last achieved our political emancipation. We pledge ourselves to liberate all of our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discriminations. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. So, a few important terms that we missed while I was giving such a speech here is that confer, it means give. Okay, so, what's that word? Okay, well, I don't see that word actually. That's fine. We who were outlaws. Because of its policy of apartheid, many countries had earlier broken off diplomatic relationship with with South Africa. Okay. Emancipation. It means freedom from restriction. Emancipation. Okay. And deprivation means state of not having one's rightful benefits. Discrimination means being treated differently or unfavorably. So oral comprehension check. Where did the ceremonies take place? Can you name any public buildings in India that are made out of sandstone? This happened in the what? Union Building Amphitheater in Pretoria. Okay, and a public building in India that is made of sandstone is the Red Fort. Can you say how 10th May is an autumn day in South Africa? Uh, it is the southern hemisphere. So yes, this is the thing. South Africa is in the southern hemisphere, meaning seasons are flipped compared to those in the northern hemisphere, like India, Europe, or USA. All right. So in May it is summer or spring in northern hemisphere, but in South Africa it's autumn. So as you can see, the first column in this table. All right. At the beginning of his speech, Mandela mentions an extraordinary human disaster. What does he mean by this? The white rule and apartheid and racial discrimination and so on for more than 300 years. What is the glorious human achievement? Uh, the democratic elections, for one thing, and the being free of the South African people. Uh, okay. Now, what does Mandela uh, thank the international leaders for joining Mandela and being in the South African soil for the inauguration day of the republic. Okay, we read that. What ideals does he set out for the future of South Africa? He wants the people to be out of the cycle of poverty, deprivation, injustice, and discriminations, etc. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union's building. Okay, it was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to the democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before they would not have saluted but arrested me. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of black, red, green, blue, and gold of the new South African flag. Few things to note. Not unmindful means aware of or conscious. Spectacular array means impressive display. Chevron means a pattern in the shape of V. Okay. Now, the day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of whites singing Kosi Sikelel Ia Africa and blacks singing Die Stem, the old anthem of the republic. Okay, so whites sang the blacks national anthem and the blacks sang the white national anthem. Okay, so, although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words by heart. Few things to note: the meaning of despised means had a very low opinion of, that means they hated it. On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, the white-skinned people of the South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned people of their own land. The structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhumane societies the world has ever known. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century and my eighth decade as a man, that system had been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognizes the rights and freedoms of all people, regardless of the color of their skin. That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. I felt that day, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. I was pained that I was not able to thank them and they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Thambos, the Walter Sislus, the Chief Luthilis, the Yusuf Daddus, the Bram Fishers, the Robert Sobukwas of our times. Men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity that their like may never be known again. Okay, so before continuing, let's see this meanings. Wrought, that means old fashioned formal method for done or achieved. Profound, that means deep and strong. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression to create such heights of character. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soils, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. Time and again, I have seen men and women risk and give up their lives for an idea. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Now, why did he say that? See, if you are a little baby, okay, if you are a little baby and you see a snake, you are pretty dumb and you don't know what a snake is. Back then, or I don't hope that you are still like that. Uh, you are a baby and you don't know what a snake is. You think it was a toy or something like that. So you're not afraid of it. That is the absence of fear. But at the same time, you know that what's in front of you is a snake and it's about to kill you. But then you're like, nah, not today. And you grabbed a stick and you killed it. Okay, that is the triumph over that fear. So, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over that fear. Okay. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Huh. I think otherwise. Hate is more pure than love. Love can be acted, but hate cannot. Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards, perhaps just for a second, but it was good enough to reassure me and keep me going. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. So, here's the meanings here. A resilience, it means the ability to deal with any kind of hardships and recover from its effects. Resilience, okay. Pushed to our limits, that means pushed to the last point in our ability to bear pain. Oral comprehension check. What do the military generals do? Uh, and how was their attitude changed and why? They saluted Nelson Mandela. But before that, not so many years ago, they would have rather arrested than salute Nelson Mandela. Okay, that's the change in attitude. Why were two national anthems sung? To represent the correlation or now the friendship between the whites and the blacks of South Africa. How does Mandela describe the system of government in his country in the first decade and the final decade of the 20th century? In the first decade, it was the worst government, most inhumane, and most racially discriminating government ever, he says. But in the final decade of the 20th century, that is his eighth decade as a man, he says that the government has now started under him and now it's going to be a great government. That's it. What does courage mean to Mandela? The triumph over a person's fear. Which does he think is natural, to love or to hate? To love. Okay, that's what he thinks. In life, every man has twin obligations. Obligations to his family, to his parents, to his wife and children. And he has an obligation to his people, his community, his country. In a civil and humane society, each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities. But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of those obligations. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duties to his people was inevitably ripped from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart, a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family, but in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligation as a son, a brother, a father, and a husband. I was not born with a hunger to be free. I was born free, free in every way that I could know, free to run in the fields near my mother's hut, free to swim in the clear stream that ran through my village, free to roast mealies under the stars and ride the broad backs of slow moving bulls. As long as I obeyed my father and abided by the customs of my tribe, I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion, when I discovered as a young man that my freedom had actually been taken from me, that I began to hunger for it. At first, as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself. Uh, okay? Uh, the transitory freedoms of being able to stay out at night, uh, read what I pleased, and go where I choose. Okay, that was his wish when he was a student. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, I yearned for the basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential, of earning my keep, of marrying and having a family. The freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. But then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed, but the freedom of everyone who looked like I did. That is when I joined the African National Congress, and that is when the hunger for my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of my people. So, here a few words that we need to note. Inclinations mean natural tendencies of behavior. Inevitably means unavoidably. Illusion means something that appears to be real but is not. Transitory means not permanent. Curtailed means reduced. It was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self respect that animated my life, that transformed a frightened young man into a bold one, that drove a law abiding attorney to become a criminal, that turned a family loving husband into a man without a home, that forced a life loving man to live like a monk. I am no more virtuous or self sacrificing than the next man. But I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and limited freedoms I was allowed when I knew my people were not free. Freedom is indivisible. The chains on any one of my people were the chains on all of them. The chains on all of my people were the chains on me. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow mindedness. I am not truly free if I am taking away someone else's freedom, just as surely as I am not free when my freedom is taken away from me. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. So, another important word here, prejudice, means a strong dislike without any good reason. Now here we have three questions. Then we have the NCERT exercises which you can do on your own. Oral comprehension check. What twin obligations does Mandela mention? Obligation to his family and his people. Okay. Now, what did being free mean to Mandela as a boy, as a student? How did he contrast these transitory freedoms with the basic and honorable freedoms? We can check that from the textbook and the things that I have read above. Does Mandela think that the oppressor is free, and why not? The oppressor is not free because he is a prisoner of hatred. So that's what Mandela says. And by that, this chapter is also over. Thanks for watching and bye.